Hey Skeeters! So we are going to be discussing TEK or Standard 1E today. So let's get started. So TEK or Standard 1E states, use a dictionary, a glossary, or a thesaurus, printed or electronic, to determine or confirm the meanings of words and phrases, including their connotations and denotations and their etymology. So, first thing that's just really great is, isn't that awesome that they give you permission to either use a printed version or an electronic version? So, that is good. That is great. But there are two focuses to this standard that I would like to direct your attention to. So, the first is dictionary, glossary, or thesaurus. Okay, so these are three different types of resources that you need to make sure you understand what they are in order to use them correctly. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. The other thing I want to direct your attention to is the standard is wanting you to be able to use those resources to determine or confirm meanings of words. Okay, so these might be things you already know. It might be things that you're trying to figure out. Both ways are applicable to this standard. So one thing I wanted to point out to you that you already know, however, from this standard, we've talked about this already, you've already learned it, and so this is really cool that you don't have to relearn this part. But the denotations, connotations aspect to this. So remember, connotations is the feeling of a word in the text and how you're reading it or writing about it. And then the denotations is the dictionary definition. So you are using these three resources, dictionary, glossary, or thesaurus, to determine or confirm meanings of words. And deciding, using that knowledge, once you look it up, to determine the feeling or understanding the definition. Okay, so awesome. Moving right along. So we're going to take a look at what these three things even are. Some of you might know them, but I just want to make sure I cover that so you understand the difference between the three. So a dictionary is going to be a book that you look up a word, okay? It's a resource where you look up a word to understand its meaning. Okay, it's going to tell you what that word means. But also in a dictionary, you can find lots of information. So you can find the definition, what the word means. You can find the origin or the language where the word came from. You can find how it's pronounced. You can also find what part of speech it is. So is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? Okay. So it's very helpful in many aspects. So if you need to know anything about the word, in a dictionary is probably the most prime space to be able to figure that stuff out. Okay, so dictionary is the definition, origin, pronunciation, part of speech. Okay, glossary. A glossary is the exact same thing as a dictionary, except it's only found in the back of a subject-specific book. And what I mean by that is, so let's say you're sitting in Texas history, okay? You have a textbook where you're learning all of your information from. In that textbook, if you flip to the back, you're going to have an alphabetical list of terms only from that textbook, so they're only going to be related to Texas history. Another example, if you're in biology class and you have a textbook, your biology textbook, you flip to the back, you have a glossary, an alphabetical list of words only from your biology textbook. So it's only going to be biology-specific terms. It's not going to be all the words in the English language. Okay, so that's how glossaries and dictionaries are different. So the third one is a thesaurus. So a thesaurus is a book or a resource, a resource where you look up the word, okay, and it's going to have lists of words in groups of synonyms and related concepts. So let's say I'm writing a paper and I'm using the word sad in my essay or my creative writing piece, and I really want to figure out a different way to say the word sad, okay? So I'm looking at a thesaurus, I look up the word sad, and in a thesaurus it's going to show me a list of words that I can use instead of the word sad, but still mean the same thing. Okay, it's not going to give me definitions. It's not going to give me pronunciations of words or anything. It's going to give me a word and then the list of words that comes after it that I can use instead of the word sad. Okay, so 3 different resources, 3 different jobs, but all very important to understand and know as you are writing and reading. Okay, so let's look at a star example of this standard. So the question is asking which word from paragraph 7 is closest in meaning to the word weak. So already we understand by reading this question, closest in meaning. So we're looking for a synonym to the word weak. Okay, so if we go back to this last page, which of the 3 is going to give us words that mean the same as something else? Okay, if we absolutely needed to use it, we could use a thesaurus to see if any of our answer choices match up to the word weak. Or we could just use a dictionary to look up the answer choices and see if it uses the word weak or sounds like the word weak as a definition. So there's different angles you can go in order to help you answer this star question. It also gives you the paragraph here, paragraph 7. So if you really wanted to as well, you could go back to paragraph 7, which is here, and reread the paragraph and use context clues. It may not hurt to do both things. It just kind of depends on how confident you are in the knowledge you get. So let's first look at paragraph 7 and see if we can figure it out from there. Okay. So we're looking for the word subtle. Okay, so here's the word vulnerable. So let's look at that. A good book requires more from us in the way of intelligence and imagination and memory, and that makes it vulnerable to its glitzy competitors. But a book also rewards us more abundantly. Okay, so vulnerable in this context, okay, understanding how the connotation of the word vulnerable and the actual definition of the word vulnerable, it kind of could turn into the closest meaning to weak. So let's just hold on to that and make sure we're thinking correctly. Okay, so we keep reading. Sustained is right here. So the best books invite us to share in a sustained, complex, subtle effort to make sense of things, to understand some portion of our humanity and our universe. So if we're looking at the word sustained in this context, I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with being weak. Okay, the best books invites us to share in a sustained, complex, subtle effort. So it's just talking about continuity. So sustained is not the right answer. So we keep reading. Impenetrable. Okay, so if we don't know what that word means, we can definitely look it up. But just based on our context clues, my own hunger set in long before I could read, back when ink marks on the page were still an impenetrable mystery, and yet even now, after devouring so many thousands of books, I am as ravenous as ever. So, just from the sound and the feel of the word in the context, the connotation, okay, impenetrable does not have anything to do with weak. So impenetrable is not the right answer. And let's see, subtle. Okay, right here. Alright, so we're back in paragraph 7. The best books invite us to share in a sustained, complex, subtle effort to make sense of things, to understand some portion of our humanity and our universe. So if we're looking at the word subtle and we're thinking about the connotation, okay, the feeling behind this word in the context in this paragraph here, that does not have anything to do with the word weak. So I'm going to go ahead and cross out that answer choice. So we're only left with J, so let's just double check ourselves. If we kind of backtrack, since we're rethinking this now, we've come back to the answer choice J. Weak has a negative connotation. Okay? If we had to decide between the two, positive or negative, it's definitely going to be negative. So, if we're trying to decide based on connotation, vulnerable, sustained, impenetrable, subtle. Really, the only negative word would be vulnerable, potentially. Depends on how it's being used in the paragraph. So let's go back to the paragraph and kind of pair our knowledge together, okay? So, by comparison with films or videos or computer bulletin boards, a good book requires more from us in the way of intelligence and imagination and memory, and that makes it vulnerable to its glitzy competitors. So, it's comparing books to videos and films and computers and technology. Okay, and it's saying it makes it vulnerable to its glitzy competitors. So it's kind of talking about how it's not going to stack up. Okay, so J is the right answer. Okay. So it's all about how you pair your knowledge together. You can use the dictionary to find out the exact definitions. You can decide what the connotations are of all the words and decide which one would pair up better. And so there's different ways to do and answer this question. So hopefully that helped. And if you have questions, just ask your English teacher and they will be more than happy to sit with you and kind of talk you through this process. We empower, we impact, we love. We are Skeeter Nation.